Marco
There we
Wutzer.
go. Chris Rowe, how are you?
I'm fantastic. It's great to see you. I know you've been very busy lately. You've been running around a lot, haven't you?
Yeah, I'm glad to be on your show, on the new show. Let's get the show going.
And this is Marco WUTZER'S. Marco Wutzer is a cryptocurrency fund manager. You've been building it
Yeah.
for several years, right? What's it been? 5 years so far?
No, a little less. Yeah, a little over 3 years. A little over 3 years.
A little over 3 years. Okay, so you went through the big move higher. Everybody thinks about Bitcoin kind of as the benchmark for cryptocurrency. So we'll talk in those terms. When you started the fund, what was Bitcoin at?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, I don't even remember because we use only Bitcoin only as our benchmark. We don't really hold Bitcoin. We buy, of course, a lot of other smaller stuff. But I can only answer very diplomatically, a lot lower than it is now.
All right, well, 3 years ago, it was a lot lower than it is now, right? What's that now? 50, 45, something like that, thousand?
Over 51 today, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and got up to 65, 67,000 at some point, pulled way back, and now it's up again from the beginning. And so that's cool. Everybody is scared to death about the government just wringing out all of the value that the people store in money. I try to tell my kids all the time that there's two ways to use currency, the dollar, and one is how they should use it, which is just an exchange, a place that everybody kind of trusts to exchange. It doesn't have to be in there for more than a couple minutes, and then they should restore that money somewhere else or that value somewhere else. I try to get them to stop even saying the word money when they're talking about saving, and I also try to get them to stop using the word investing, because investing kind of implies that everything is pegged to the dollar, that you're trying to get things to go up by more than a dollar, and the dollar is just another vehicle to store your wealth. So try
Did
to
you
call it
make him read
value.
the Uncle Eric books?
No, I didn't.
I mean, I have a bunch of them. I haven't read them myself. I mean, they're geared towards, I would say, probably children, or I guess they're good for adults too. But in very simple terms, they basically explain what is inflation and stuff like that. So that's, I guess, a good curriculum for little ones to have.
There is what is the? I'm gonna click on this very quickly on my screen to see if it's the right. Layered money is one that I thought was really good. If anybody has not read much or kind of gotten themselves educated on the relationship between cryptocurrency and gold and the dollar and the central bank. If you hear people talking about these things and you feel like it's going over your head and you're smiling and nodding, or even if you're an expert in it, I strongly recommend this book, Layered Money by Nick Badia. It's not an intimidating book. It's a very thin book with pretty big font, and it really lays it out nice and clearly. Everybody who I've recommended this book to said that it changed their life. So
Layered money. Yeah, I mean, you know, when this is really the root of everything, and so few people understand what's going on here, because you can choose which side you live on. You know, you can live on the inflationary side in fiat currencies, holding dollars, and then you just struggle to keep up, and basically you can't keep up even if you're doing relatively well. Or you can choose the side of deflation or hyperdeflation, even by holding a really strong asset like Bitcoin that is basically hyper deflating against all the fiat stuff, and going up in value because the nominal value of the Bitcoin is going up and up and up. But that's really not Bitcoin rising in value. That's really the fiat system going down the drain. And this is really the core issue here. If you understand that and position yourself accordingly, and not just in Bitcoin, and if you embrace fully the blockchain ecosystem and everything that's coming there, then you will do very, very well. And it's not late to get started, even now.
you know, what I was thinking about on the way over here today was, I wonder if, maybe you can poke holes in this or tell me if it's a good theory that might be true, but I wonder if Bitcoin is something that the government wants everybody to go in. Digital currency like Bitcoin or Bitcoin, because when they do giant things, when there's a grand plan, it's they're looking 5 years out, 10 years out. And in those plans, I would imagine includes or lives reasons, and maybe they don't have the crisis mapped out. Maybe they just say, wait for the next crisis. Maybe they wait for the banks to fail or the pandemic or whatever it is. And they push these bills through, or they print a shitload of money. And I feel like Bitcoin kind of, people started talking about it, I guess, back in 2012 or something like that. And you had Obama, he got reelected. And I wonder if they were thinking ahead of time after the 2008 bailouts, after the printing of the money, QE infinity, quantitative easing infinity, and the world ultimately waking up to the fact that they are diluting our currency, robbing us, and just becoming big fat pigs about it. And ultimately, we would realize this and want to get the hell out of dirty money. And if they have us in a digital currency, then it's a record of everything that we do. Do you ever think about that? And perhaps Bitcoin.
But it's the other way around. They don't have us in a digital currency. We have them in a digital currency, because in the fiat world, they exert 100% control over everything. In the crypto world, you're sovereign. And yeah, until now, most of the stuff is trackable because it's not anonymous, it's pseudonymous. So you can see what's going on the blockchain, who's doing what. But the control rests with the person who holds the asset and no longer with the government. So why would any government voluntarily give that up? That makes really no sense to me. Of course, they. Huh?
What if they have a way of controlling Bitcoin that we're not?
How?
I don't know. I just kind of wonder sometimes if it's a trap.
I mean, definitely not. That's why they're so hell-bent on launching these central bank digital currencies, because then that's the digital equivalent of a fiat currency, where they again have 100% control over everything. But it's escaping their grasp. It's slowly slipping away. We're well ahead of the curve here with the crypto stuff. A government moves slow. I mean, they take basically 10 years to wake up to the new reality, and too little, too late. Good for us. With that goes away the power over money. With that goes away a lot of the power over taxation, and the more of this power is removed from government, the better for the individual. So this will just lead to a better and brighter future for everyone.
Well, so I know you're a new father, right? So now that you're a new father, you must be looking at the world differently.
Certainly differently, because you see everything again through the eyes of a newborn baby, and then later on a little boy, and then through the eyes of a teenager and so on. So yeah, definitely it changes your perspective again. But in terms of the outlook, it's always been my outlook. I've for many years talked about the coming second renaissance, and that's just not just like a meme or a slogan. I really think this is what's going to happen. These things just really take decades to play out. I mean, we had a little bit more than a decade now to start the whole crypto revolution, and now it's kind of taking hold. And over the next decade, we will really feel the impact. And then once really the really crappy fiat system or the worst of the currency starts collapsing and dying, and it comes towards the center, to the big mighty dollar that will no longer be so mighty, we will all of a sudden have this big sucking sound where all the value will move into crypto. And then of course tokenization of all the other assets and ownership of data, ownership of everything that you do in the digital world. All of this is happening now. It's slowly starting to happen on many fronts, and it will just take another 10, 15 years, I would guess, to play out. But then all of a sudden we will look back, and we won't not recognize the world from before anymore. Everything has shifted. We're in a new paradigm, and good things will happen, because, like I said, the power will be returned to the individual. A lot of creativity, a lot of economic power, that finally you're no longer being robbed by the government through inflation and all these things. So it's just a lot of value, power, and creativity that will be unleashed and returned to the individual, and that can only be a good thing.
Do you find that there's a lot of places where you are that are accepting Bitcoin as payment? Where are you right now? I know you travel around the world and you move from country to country, South America. Where are you right now?
Yeah, my situation is a little bit crazy right now because at the moment I'm in Lima in Peru, but all my affairs are spread out over 4 different countries all along South America, and I'm right now in the process of consolidating everything into Brazil. Actually, in southern Brazil is our main home base, but we had our kid here in Lima. That's why we have a really long-term layover here. But then I'm still tying up affairs in Uruguay and in Colombia. And so, yeah, the goal is to become a little bit less decentralized in my private life because it's gotten a little bit out of control.
Yeah. And is it easy for you to use Bitcoin or any other crypto as currency out in Peru, out in Lima?
I mean, I could. It's not necessary, especially here in Peru. It's a much more cash-based economy than other countries. I mean, where obviously crypto is very much used on a day-to-day basis is in Argentina. There, just the hyperinflation is already so far ahead that a lot of people are using crypto, and so you see it in some areas, but. For somebody like me who has access to the banking system, who can pay with cards and so on, for me, it's in terms of the payments, it's not a day-to-day necessity. But the whole payment space is obviously a killer use case for crypto. It is one of the fastest growing areas in crypto. That's why we see Visa now settling transactions on the Solana network actually, and having big efficiency and cost gains there. That's why we're seeing PayPal launching their own stablecoin. A lot of players getting into the market, and in countries where there's a lot of problems with fiat already, like Turkey, Argentina, Nigeria, and so on. Basically, where you have the worst currencies, you have the most widespread use of cryptos as for payments.
Yeah.
Of course, in the West or in the developed world, there's not really that strong need for it yet. That might change. And eventually it will change as it just becomes more ubiquitous and cheaper, better, faster, all of that.
Yeah.
But this is definitely one of the killer use cases of crypto, no doubt about it.
I read a story about a girl on OnlyFans who's making hundreds of thousands of dollars. I forget if it was per month. You know, I scanned the article. I didn't really read too much about it, but it's not a person. It's a deep fake video. So, you know, pun intended, deep fake. But
yeah, I mean, this is a whole trend that's starting. I heard similar stories, and not just of one account. But this again brings us back to blockchain too, because if these deep fakes, they will only get better and easier to create for everybody. So this fake stuff in general, fake digital stuff with all AI generated content will become a bigger and bigger problem. But there we have then the solution with blockchains again, where you have a proof of provenance, where you can prove that something is authentic. So as this both AI and crypto gets more and more integrated into everything, then basically proof of personhood, proof of human creation is then something that will be provided by blockchains in the background for all these things. So I would imagine you could basically have some kind of watermark in the video that then guarantees the authenticity or something like that.
yeah, I guess, I mean, you know, you talk about blockchain and things like that. Everybody's heard about it. Not everybody understands it. And to the end user, so if I'm watching a video of you, Marco Wutzer, and I'm not sure whether it's you or not, I understand that there's a blockchain. I understand that there's a way to authenticate, to make sure that this is real. I know that there's a way to do it. I just can't envision how the hell I would do it. So I guess everybody on their phone or whatever their trusted devices at the time they'd have something where they point it at you, or I don't know if it's a QR code or something, but how the hell do they find out? How the hell do they know? I mean, you're gonna go through your whole day. Anytime you flip on a screen, you don't know if something's real or not. And you got to just keep on checking it somehow on the blockchain. I mean,
this is the thing with crypto in general. Like, we're still waiting to onboard the first billion users, right? And how do we get there? Not by dealing with seed phrases and all this complicated stuff. The usability has to get to a point where, I mean, first of all, there are so many different chains right now, and hopping between these chains is all a nightmare. All of that has to be completely abstracted away. It has to disappear completely in the background. You have to basically be using crypto in an experience very similar to when you log into a a service now, be that a bank account or a social media account or whatever, where you don't see what's happening in the background, or just like when you send an email. I mean, most people don't even know what is SMTP or IMAP protocol. It just happens in the background. And this is where we're slowly getting to with crypto. I mean, that's one of my big topics for the year, is that basically three things. One is all the money printing, which we briefly touched upon earlier. That's basically lighting the whole crypto thing on fire. That's like more fuel into the fire. But in terms of the blockchain ecosystem itself, we need to abstract all of this away and the complexity away. And this is slowly happening now. There's a lot of advancements there on all sides. In terms of overall user experience. And then lastly, also the capacity of everything. If we look back at the last bull run 3 years ago or 2 years ago, which is always in the bull run when we're at new all-time highs, is when the mainstream, the retail user comes back and where crypto gets really attention. There was no capacity to handle all of that, and fees went crazy and stuff broke basically. But now there is several years more of advancements, lots of additional, faster, better blockchains, additional layers in the blockchain ecosystem that handle additional or provide additional capacity. So now, if 1 billion users show up, now we have the capacity for that. So these three factors, the crazy amount of debt in the world and the money printing that comes with it, and then the better user experience, and then the capacity, the infrastructure that's there, that will lead to a really, really strong crypto cycle. That's why I always talk about the possibility of this cycle being a super cycle, and we're not having diminishing returns where the asset class gets bigger each cycle and then the returns get a little smaller each cycle. But I think this will be an upcycle in the sense that the returns will be better than last cycle.
What I like about Bitcoin and crypto in general, you know, I'm a money manager, and also I built an investment research firm and built all this algorithmic rules-based trading systems and things like that. But when it comes to trading crypto, and I'll trade right on Coinbase, you know, I'm not putting it in the wallet or anything like that. I'm such a rookie.
So you're part of the problem.
Yeah, I'm like an old man. I'm like an old man who doesn't get it. But the thing is, I don't get too deep into it. You know, when I look at things, I look at the chart. I look at the strength of the asset, you know, relative to all the other assets out there. I basically leave it at that, unless it's a long-term investment in the company and then start getting into the fundamentals. But, you know, it's all the same to me. I look at a Bitcoin chart, I look at a chart of Microsoft, you know, it's the same thing. But what I do like about it is how it had been a real pain in the ass. Because I'll buy crypto, I'll buy Bitcoin or Ethereum, and I'll just tuck it away and forget about it. And usually because it got clobbered, and I'm like, fuck it. I know it's going to come back eventually. I'm just going to put it to the side. And, you know, recently I just forgot I even owned it. And it occurred to me that I actually have all this money laying around. And so I had to get back into Coinbase, and I started going to all these other, I don't know, I started checking up on other ones. Gemini, I think it's out there somewhere. Isn't there one owned by Goldman Sachs or something like that?
I mean, this is also a space that's growing all the time. Yeah, there's Gemini, there's Kraken, there's a whole bunch of players in the US and abroad as well, of course.
Save my money.
But the thing is, one of the key benefits that you have with this whole crypto ecosystem is that it affords you the sovereignty with your assets. And if you learn how to handle that, and it's not that complicated. I mean, I don't trust the banking system at all. And I mean, I'm a special case because I live very internationally. I hop around all over the place. I have bank accounts all over the world. And so I have a lot more trouble also with banking than most people. Try opening in a reputable bank, a bank account somewhere in a reasonable jurisdiction and say, oh, I live in Peru. And they're like, oh, alarm, right? So I had money temporarily confiscated by the Office of Foreign Assets Control, because every transfer in dollars, no matter where it goes from where, it's always routed through the US, and they analyze everything and they can just freeze your money. And then banks just kick you out, and all kinds of problems with banking in general. So a lot more than the average person. But even if you look at average people, once they do something that the system doesn't like these protests in Canada, that they freeze your bank account too. So it can happen to anyone. And I feel much safer, much more secure, and sleep much better at night knowing that I have control over everything. And in my case, of course, it's also then special because I have a lot more assets in crypto than the average person. But it gives you the ultimate peace of mind. You no longer depend on any kind of third-party middleman like a bank. And that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think everybody kind of feels nervous about having their money in the bank, knowing they could get shut down or they could just hold on to it. I've gone to the bank recently and asked them for like 5,000 or 10,000 in cash. They couldn't do it. It's sort of weird, very scary. So people, I guess old school people buy gold bullion, stick it under the mattress or buried in the backyard. Did you say you had your money confiscated when you moved from country to
Yeah, I
country?
mean, frozen, not confiscated because it was released again, but it caused me all sorts of problems because it was a large amount of money. It was for a big transaction, and I had payment deadlines and all kinds of penalties associated with it. And first of all, it's just they don't inform you, right? All of a sudden, your money is gone, and it simply doesn't arrive, and then you have to trace it. Nobody knows what's going on. It takes a week until you know what's happening, and then oh yeah, OFAC has held the funds, and they don't call you up and say, hey, what is this or something. It's just all of a sudden gone, and you have to figure it out, and then you have to get it released. So then they come with certain demands, like what is this? Like imagine I am actually this money went from Switzerland to Brazil. And all of a sudden, it gets confiscated in the U.S. because, like I said, dollars always get rerouted through the U.S. Like, although it has nothing to do with America itself, I guess it does.
What do you think about AI, man? Scary, fun, little of both? AI,
Scary, not at all. I mean,
not at
the
all.
fear mongering is typical just for any new technology.
Right.
There's this great Twitter account, I think it's called Pessimist's Archive, that has these old newspaper clippings when people were afraid of the car, of the train, of whatever random new invention, and how horrible it will be. It's the same with AI. You know, there's this whole idea that there will be this AI system that will take over humanity. I mean, that's complete nonsense because motivation, drive to do something comes from hormones. You know, that's something that humans have that machines don't have. They can only do what you program them to do. And it's just basically a huge misunderstanding of what is actually a large language model or AI and how does it actually really work. It really, I mean, it's just like with guns, right? You can protect yourself or you can just randomly kill somebody. It's up to the user or the designer. So it's the same thing with AI. And there's also this huge hype with inflated expectations. Yeah, AI is great and everything, but for it to be really, really useful, it still needs a few years of development, I think.
I was scrolling through the reels earlier today and saw Elon Musk on one of them talking about how what did he say? Was it 6 months or a year? Whatever it was, very soon we are to have, or it might have already happened, it might have been an old reel, to have his Neuralink installed in the first human brain. And one of the first things that they're looking to tackle is making it so that blind people can see, even if they've never seen before, if they've never had their vision. And so I think about stuff like Neuralink, and I think about that combined with AI. And I wonder if they'll have a solution to spinal cord injuries, because I'm a paraplegic. And so I wonder if sometime in my lifetime, when I think about AI and I think about things like Neuralink, it makes me wonder if at some point maybe there's a chance I'll be back to normal.
But isn't your nerve cut somewhere in the spine, or is it a problem in the brain?
Spine. A lot of people don't really think too hard about it. There's no reason for them to think about it, but really your spine is your brain. I mean, it's connected to it is your brain. It's your the neurons don't.
It's a central nervous system, right? But I mean, I'm not an expert on Neuralink. I have no idea how it works. But if it's an implant in the brain, I would assume it works on the brain and the nervous system there. So if you have a problem like further down, can it reach there
Well, I don't
and work there?
know.
Or?
They came out with the first Tesla, then they came out with what they have now. I mean, maybe if they could do it in your brain, why wouldn't they be able to do something like that in your spine, which is still you're still dealing with the same types of cells.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of reaching
And
cells. If you
what
smoke,
about stem cell injections, right, in the affected area? Does that help with a potential recovery, or is that not the
no,
way it works?
I've heard no, there is potential for it. And I've heard, I mean, as long ago as maybe 10 or maybe 13 years ago, I was talking to somebody who is kind of the head of a support group, knows a lot of paraplegics and quadriplegics, and he told me a bunch of stories about people going out to I don't know, I don't think it was Peru. I think it was perhaps Argentina, and stem cells being something that they would use out there before they get cleared here in the United States. They have people basically experimenting with their bodies, and they feel like, I'll give it a shot. If you ask people who are paralyzed if they would give it a shot, maybe they'll die, or maybe the stem cells will work and they'll have a chance at least regaining half of what they've lost. You'll find a lot of them will say that they roll the dice, and he told me some stories about people that did roll the dice. He told me some stories about a guy, for example, who he knew, who went and was getting the stem cells injected and actually regained almost full function, all feeling, all motor function. Eventually died because there were tumors in his spine. The tumors just went crazy because the stem cells, I guess, continued the growth or something. And somebody else who paid a lot of money, it's $50,000 per treatment, and ultimately ran out of money. And it's kind of like the South Park episode. I don't know if you ever saw that South Park episode, but you run out of money, and then he ended up worse than he was. And she told me a couple stories about people that regained some functionality and a little bit, and that's the story. So for me, I wouldn't want to roll the dice. I wouldn't want to roll the dice because you can end up just having chronic pain. I've got my kids. I've got a lot of responsibility. I've got the family. I've got the
But
company.
you're saying chronic pain just from stem cell treatments that are nowadays completely normal in most countries, right?
Well, we're talking about the location, being in the spinal cord.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The same thing as getting in your ACL. So yeah, it's a tricky place to mess around with, and that's why they haven't yet really found a cure or a surgery or a procedure to fix the problem. It's just the least understood, your central nervous system, whether it be your brain or your spine. It's the least understood part of biology to this day. So that's why I wonder if AI being able to think so fast and how quickly it's going to advance its understanding of how everything works. Perhaps they'll crack that code, but yeah, I hope they will. But you never know.
Yeah, I mean, science is always advancing fast. Who knows what's possible in 5 or 10 years? But regular stem cell treatments, they work really well. I had 2 friends that recently did it in Medellin, in Colombia, which is has very excellent medical care, and the stem cell treatments are also relatively cheap. I think they started like $10,000, $12,000. It always depends on the amount of cells you get injected, the number of treatments, and so on. But one friend of mine had knee problems, and he got it in his knees, and it helped a lot. And my other friend, actually, he got shot in Medellin, and he actually died on the operating table and came back. And so he has this huge scar going all the way down his chest. And he lost like 1 meter of his colon. There was like multiple operations and everything, like really close call. But he got immediately after he got out of the hospital, when he was like barely couldn't even eat yet, because when the colon is affected, it's like extreme, all the stuff that you have to do to you to get you back to normal. But he immediately started this stem cell treatment, and he was healing super fast. It's just a few weeks later now, and if you meet him with clothes on, you wouldn't know anything happened.
What was the situation? Why did he end up getting shot?
Well, that's why it always pays to have really good situational awareness when you travel, or just anywhere really, and especially in Latin America, and especially in a place like Colombia. He was just picking up money at an ATM, and in a nice part of town, not even somewhere sketchy, in a mall, in a major mall. And it's basically they wanted to rob him, and they didn't intend to shoot him. I mean, that's the analysis of the video. They didn't intend to shoot him, but he was wearing a backpack, and they tried to grab him to turn him around, and holding the gun with the other hand, and a shot was accidentally fired and went in here and then out at the bottom, so dissected the body like at a strange angle.
Ooh. When I went to visit you in Medellin in 2021, first thing we did when we landed in the airport, we went to the ATM machine, and I had a guy who was sitting there with a great big chrome looking shotgun, just standing right next to the ATM, right next to me. I actually posted the picture on my Instagram. Um, I thought that was pretty trippy. I didn't feel safe when I
Yeah,
went.
I mean, airports are especially sketchy because that's where they mark you and where they follow you, and
Oh
especially in a
man.
place like Medellin, they even like if you wear a fancy watch, there are gangs specialized just on watches and stuff. So you really got to be careful if you're in these kinds of places.
Yeah, I mean, how they've got cameras everywhere, especially in the United States. And I wonder what would happen in those kind of situations because the cameras with AI capabilities and tracking your behavior and identifying suspicious behavior, even what you have in your pockets. Um, if the wrong group of people can hack into those cameras and just kind of spot where people are and tag them, uh, pretty much track somebody anywhere they go. I think about stuff
Yeah,
like,
and Medellin has actually a really decent surveillance system where they follow. I mean, you have so many robberies on motorbikes where they then just crisscross across the city and escape. But they catch a lot of them. But in this case, it was a fake license plate. So eventually the camera loses them and then it just turns into nothing, right?
hmm, is it dangerous where you live now? Lima?
I mean, it certainly has some really sketchy parts of town. There's actually a few weeks ago, they actually declared martial law over parts of Lima where the military moved in because the crime got so out of control. But this is, it's called the conos, so basically the edges of the city. Lima is a huge city, I think, what, 11 million people or something like that. So yeah, I would say it's okay in most areas, but then there are also areas that are really, really bad.
Hmm. And okay, and so how long are you gonna stay there?
Well, next week I'm actually flying to Brazil. First flight with my son. I'm a little bit scared of that, his first big trip. But yeah, next week we'll be 2 months in Brazil, and
How old is your son
then
now?
probably come. Huh?
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but how old did you say your son was?
He's 7 months now.
Okay. And so yeah, so this will be his first flight.
His first flight, yeah, but in his case, because he has a health condition, everything is like extra special. So, a normal baby, after it eats, you burp it and you can put it down, right? With him, you always have to hold him upright, because one of the side effects is reflux, and they vomit so quickly and then burns everything, makes everything worse. His condition is called laryngomalacia. It's basically an immaturity of the larynx and the digestive system that goes away over time, but while he has it the first few months, it gets worse and worse and worse for the first half year or so. And it's extremely challenging to deal with because of all the side effects. Like then he can't swallow. That means he can't eat. So then he's always super stressed out and anxious. And because of the reflux, then also lots of problems sleeping. So there's a whole chain reaction of things that you have to deal with. So yeah, it's I have no experience. Maybe it's completely fine the trip down to Brazil, but yeah, I hope it won't be too stressful.
Yeah, I read about it because you told me I was concerned, and I know that it's the wide variation of how severe it could be, and I think they said nearly half of newborns, in one way or another, whether it's barely detectable, uh, are born that way, and it's often just fixed kind of quickly, within the first month or so.
Yeah, I mean, half is probably too high. I mean, the number I heard is that 10% have it at least to the degree where it's an issue. And then, of course, how bad it is, there's a whole spectrum. But I guess it's just one of many things where the little ones, when they get born, they're just so vulnerable and so easy to develop a condition. And then if you look at pretty much 95% of those kids when they're 2 or 3 years old, then all of that is history.
Isn't it interesting how you have babies, and even young children, they're vulnerable on one hand, but at the same time, they're like superhuman, they heal right away. I think you're
Oh,
born.
this is so crazy. Like my son, he always, no matter how often you cut his fingernails, they're always super sharp. And then when he scratches himself like in the face and has like a deep wound, like
Uh,
really bleeding, like you think, oh, will this be a scar? And you're like, next day, like, hey, where's this thing? It's gone.
yeah,
I don't see it anymore. If I had this, I would be walking around with it for 3 weeks.
yeah, it's gone right away, next day. I think babies are born with, I don't know, maybe you read the the What to Expect When You're Expecting and all those new baby books. I don't know if you read them or not, but when I was reading those, I think I remember reading that the baby starts out with 300 and something bones, and they fuse together, and they end up, by the time in a few years they've got 100 and something bones. Did you hear that? You ever see that?
Uh, no, I'm not familiar with that. I just know that basically the head is open at the top. It's like
Yeah.
basically just like a gel up there. And so they're just so fragile in the beginning. I'm glad he's 7 months old now. So he's much more robust and you can play around with him and everything. But in the beginning, it's like, ugh.
They can't even hold their head up. Their neck has got no muscle.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Did you keep the umbilical cord and all that? Did you keep the
Yeah, we have that cryo-preserved. So I have my own stem cells ready for whoever needs it in the family. Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you think what are the chances that that's a great big scam, or maybe like a lottery ticket? It's like nobody actually ends up needing it, but if you do, you know.
Yeah, I mean, well, you might not need it for an accident or something crazy, but I mean, as you get older, these stem cells will come in handy.
Yeah, maybe for me. That's why I kept them. It was selfish.
And surprisingly, I mean, Peru is a very a poor country with lots of issues. But according to that company that we hired to cryopreserve everything, it's 8 or 9 out of 10 parents do that these days. So it's a surprisingly high number.
What is it that got you into crypto to begin with? Like, what did you do before, and what did you do before starting the crypto fund or getting into crypto to the point where you were an analyst that became a well-known analyst?
Yeah, I mean, I was really into crypto since the mid-90s as a teenager already, because there were early crypto protocols. Even back then, there was the Digital Monetary Trust and all kinds of things.
Really?
So I've always been following that. And then, of course, when the Bitcoin white paper came out, I was on the cypherpunk mailing list. So I was one of the first people in the world to hear about it and to spread the gospel.
When was that?
2008. Or was it 2009? I don't even remember exactly,
You
but
had
a long time
white
ago
paper
by
on
now.
Bitcoin at that point?
Yeah, when
White paper?
Satoshi first published it, he published it on a mailing list, and so I got that and I read it, and I'm like, if this really works, it will change the world. That's really interesting. But of course, you never, having gone through previous iterations of similar ideas that never worked, I didn't have this expectation for it to work out. I just thought that it's like really creative, the solution, and let's see how it gets implemented and everything. At that point, it hadn't even really existed yet because they still had to develop the whole thing. But then when Bitcoin came out, I was like, I really don't want to burn out my CPU mining this thing, because basically it spins up your CPU to 100% and it heats up your computer and everything. Although it would have been a very smart thing to just get some extra computer and mine a little bit. But I was more just curious to follow along. And then, I mean, I still got on board when it was like at $2. So it was still good timing overall. But yeah, I could be a trillionaire right now. Yeah, and so I got in early there, but basically didn't do much initially. I mean, made some money, but obviously not as much as I could, but was always interested in the tech side and on the money side. But my background is really in online marketing and publishing and software development, so all kinds of different projects there. And then when crypto got much, much bigger than around 2017, I got much more focused on crypto then, because I was also really disappointed because Bitcoin came out. And then, yeah, there was this first initial hype on the run up to $1,000. I think that was 2013. And then like, okay, the concept is out there now of like a peer-to-peer decentralized blockchain. This can be applied to anything and all kinds of things. Like, where are all the people developing this? And basically, except for like 2 or 3 projects that were not really that interesting, for many years, nothing has happened. So it really needs to permeate the morphogenetic field, this idea, for it to like mature a little bit, I guess. Because for years, nothing was happening. It was really frustrating. And then even from like 2015, 16, I barely followed any crypto stuff at all because it was just too boring. But then all of a sudden, it mushroomed and exploded. And like, I guess it started 2016 and really built up into a big hype 2017. And then it got really interesting again, and then I really focused on it again, and that's when it then turned into my full-time obsession, basically.
Do you buy a lot of other digital assets? Do you get into the metaverse or the domains for Avalanche, or things like that?
Yeah, I have a few thousand NFTs, but not what people would think of NFTs. It has nothing to do with profile pictures or art or so. They're basically a new form of domain names, which I think has a good potential to become the new standard in the future. And other than that, obviously, I own different cryptos, like all the cutting edge stuff, which I think will become blue chip protocols in the future. So there, of course, I own a whole basket of stuff. But outside of that, yeah, there are these new. Sorry.
By stocks.
Yeah, I still have a stock portfolio, but I'm really tempted because I mean I also have like I don't want to have everything crypto, obviously, but then I also have millions of dollars in real estate, so I'm like always tempted to just ditch all the stocks because everything just moves so slowly. I mean, I guess that's also because I'm focused on hard assets in my stock portfolio, and the commodity space is just like ultra cheap and has been ultra cheap for so long. So I'm always tempted to throw in the towel, but I think actually coal is an excellent investment. So I own some coal miners, and I actually increased my exposure to coal, and I own a bunch of other stuff. But I also am a little bit in the precious, active in the precious metal side, miners and explorers and stuff. And that's just like an ongoing frustration for 10 years. So, yeah, but I always want to keep a little bit. Also, you know, to keep at least some money in the banking system because you always need the bank accounts for bigger transactions and stuff. So I want to stay active a little bit in the banking system side to maintain everything in good standing.
I mean, the stock market is absolutely gunning lately, and I think it's going to go. I mean, what do you think about the 2024 elections? I mean, so this is a very strong market right now, and it kind of feels like the expectation is a positive outcome. The way I look at all the financial markets is the powers that be know what is going to happen, give or take. There's things that come up that they didn't expect, but I feel like the story is largely written, and the folks that have the most wealth are the people that decide what's going to happen. It's not that they predict things really well. It's not that they have access to such great research from the smartest people who could figure it out. It's that they dictate who's going to get elected, where the wars are going to be fought, things like that. So that big money you see piling into the market, to the US stock market like crazy. So I feel like they know. I feel like they know that it's going to be a positive outcome. And I mean,
well, I mean, I agree with you in the sense that elections, left or right, is all just a show. I mean, it's just entertainment for the masses, and it's all pre-decided. Absolutely, there's no doubt in my mind about that. But when it comes to financial markets, there are still all kinds of different cycles and short-term cycles, long-term cycles, and you know, if they were so smart and know all of that, then they would also have all the resources because then you could time everything and invest always in the right stuff. And even the richest people make huge mistakes, even the ones behind the scenes that pull the strings. So of course, they have ultimate control over the financial system because they control the money and all of that. But in terms of the cycles of the ups and downs, I don't think they control any of that.
The ups and downs are happening because they're buying or they're selling. So
yeah, I mean, there are liquidity cycles and stuff like that, of course, but I mean, the cyclical analysis, the people that do that professionally, it goes back such a long time, and there's so many weird cycles, right? You have even, I mean, that gets already a little bit sketchy, but even up to moon cycles and stuff like that. But yeah, all these cycles, they also affect each other, and then smaller cycles together form one bigger cycle and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So I don't think, I mean, you could basically take advantage of cycles, but I don't think you can really control those cycles because a lot of those cycles are also just formed by basically human psychology, right? You always have the oscillation between fear and greed. The pendulum always swings back and forth, and no matter what you do, nothing will change the human psychology. So these cycles will always be there. That's why you always have market tops and market bottoms.
I'm thinking of a different caliber of investor. You know, not people who are swayed by the fear or the greed, but the market moves because of the buying or the selling, you know? And so I don't think that they're buying because they see a trend or they're buying because of momentum or they're buying because of the hype of the story of AI or anything like that. I think they get in because they know they're positioning themselves for just the fact that they want to sell when everybody else comes into the market, realizes that the market's undervalued. I think the small cap segment of the stock market recently had a forward PE of something like 13 times earnings. Super undervalued. Earnings are starting to explode, especially in semiconductors. You look at things like Nvidia. Nvidia is a bellwether. Everybody kind of knows it. And so some people, I guess, use that as a way to get subscribers and clicks. So they say like Nvidia is going to crash. Nvidia is at its high. I think you buy Nvidia, you just forget about it for the rest of your life. They have explosive.
Even at a PE of what does it have? A PE of like 100 or something?
I just looked at it. I should know this. I just looked at it, I think yesterday. Hold on a second. I'll tell you in a minute. But what's important is the forward PE. And as the earnings explode, you have a higher E, right? You have a higher E in PE. Hold on. And
Yeah, but I mean, it's already like $1 trillion or $2 trillion company or something like that with a PE of 100, give or take. Even if it grows 10 times, it still has a PE of 10 and is one of the biggest companies in the world. I mean, that to
forward
me
PE
just
37.
sounds very risky.
Forward PE is 37.
And actual?
Well, remember forward PE, you're looking at the 12 months out, right? So if you say actual, just in case people are listening to this and don't understand what that means, we're talking about trailing PE. So trailing PE, it looks like 83. And
83, yeah, that's what I
yeah,
mean. Yeah.
83.
I mean, forward is just still a guess, things can go wrong. Like
We're right.
I wouldn't count on it.
The
But even at a forward PE of 37, I mean, I mean, I'm just at heart a value investor. I wouldn't touch these things.
in October of 22, they earned 58 cents a share. In October of 23, they earned $4 a share. If you compare the quarterly earnings to the same quarter the year prior, the growth compared to the same quarter the year prior, first, it was negative growth. Let's start with January of last year of 23. So it was a decline of 33%, their earnings. April, that quarter, ending April, the decline in earnings compared to the year prior was 20%, so less of a decline. The following quarter, July of 23, the earnings growth, same quarter year prior, was up 429%. And then the most recent quarter, 593%. And if you look at the sales, so the revenue, January of 23, so start about a year ago, sales were down 21% at 6 billion for the quarter. The next quarter, sales were only down 13%, 7.2 billion. The following quarter, sales were up 101%. And then the most recent quarter, sales were up 206%. It went from 6 billion in January of 23 to 18 billion for the quarter, most recently reported. And that was quarter ending October of 23. To me, this is the Microsoft of the early 90s, and
Yeah, but still, look, I mean, there's decent upside, of course, compared to other stocks, no doubt about it. But there's also unlimited downside. I mean, at some point there will be a correction, and Nvidia is a hedge fund hotel. Everybody's in that stock, so nothing will get crushed harder than Nvidia when a correction does come. Don't you think so?
I don't think so. I'm not saying it wouldn't get crushed when the correction comes or if a crash comes, but it's a real company, real asset. It's I don't think unlimited downside, I think is a pretty big stretch. But I also think that you go into this bull market that people are still skeptical about it. And you get into the market mania where people, I guess Warren Buffett calls the market mania when people stop thinking about valuation and the only thing they can think about is not missing the next big winner. And we haven't even come close to that yet. So if you look at a forward PE of 37 times earnings for Nvidia, when you're in a market mania, that PE could get up to 237. So with the same financials, the stock could be trading, 5 times higher, even 10 times higher valuation. We haven't even come close to that yet. So I don't know. I think that they're going to blow people away with technology that people can't even fathom. I can describe AI technology to people and they say, oh, that's an interesting story. It's just in their imagination. But when it starts to happen, I heard yesterday that in about 5 years, due to AI, we were talking earlier about the deepfake OnlyFans girls making hundreds of thousands a month. It's not even a real person. Well, they'll be able to make movies and the movie production company, I guess the famous actors, the celebrities are selling their likeness, they're selling their image, the rights to their image, because you can have a movie with Angelina Jolie in it, and it's not even her. You know, all the explosions or however many millions of dollars it takes to create, they won't have to necessarily spend that in the future. It'll be a thing of the past. And you know, then you think about what's the next step after that. I guess you could make custom movies if you want to, if you give it, just like you could tell ChatGPT to
Yeah,
tell you a story.
but still, I mean, Nvidia is in the end just making hardware, right? They're just making chips, and China is catching up big time in the
Yes, it
semiconductor
is.
space,
It's
and there's a lot of investment going into that
the
space.
brains
So
of
that it's
technology.
not that they have such a huge moat. I mean, maybe they do. It's hard to know for somebody who's not really an expert, but there's definitely there will at some point be a lot of pressure on their margins too.
I think there's something to be said for being the trillion-dollar company, you know, because especially if you look at just the last few years, you know, the idea, especially the last few years, large caps and mega caps have by far outperformed all the other groups. Small caps have been underperforming for many years, and you know, the big get bigger, they consolidate power, they do the same things to human beings. You know, COVID basically took small business owners out in handcuffs if they went to open their business, and then all those customers were told to go to the essential stores like Walmart that make the biggest political contributions. Uh, and we're just in an era in life where small and mid-size is just getting completely demolished and absorbed by the largest. So if you look at a company like Nvidia, trillion, soon to be multi-trillion dollar market cap, I think they'll have competitors, but just like Microsoft, they'll buy them, they'll acquire them, they'll stop them in their tracks one way or another. I think you have
I
to.
mean, I agree with you in principle. I just don't like to buy things like kind of in the middle of a cycle already close to all-time highs. I always like to buy really early and then ride the entire cycle. But your basic principle that basically winners keep winning, right? That's something I always say in the crypto space too. Like we own in our portfolio a bunch of projects that have been hugely winning, and the worst thing you can do is like sell them and buy something else because they will just get bigger and better and keep crushing it. So the premise is absolutely sound. It's just when I hear about buying into that now, after we're already so high in the stock market, yeah, it might get a blow off top and go much higher. But just for my personality, I like to be as anti-cyclical as I can be. And I always find that it's very easy, at least for me, to identify a bottom. But to get the top right is very challenging. I mean, maybe in stocks it's easier, but in crypto the cycles come quick and fast, and they go crazy, and to do a good job on the exit, I think is the hardest part.
There's something to be said for, I mean, if company is breaking highs, people just focus on the price and they say, oh, the price is higher than it's ever been. But you could say that relative to what it's worth and where it's going, you could make the argument that it's cheaper now than it's ever been, even though it's breaking highs, considering the future value of it or considering the current value of it, relative to what it's worth and where it's going. I mean, it's breaking highs for a reason. You can't have a bunch of people on E-Trade, you know, trading in their living room, push the stock higher, to push $1 trillion company higher. You've got to have people that have so much money that they basically know what's going to happen in the future. And I think a lot of people are missing out on a big trend. Of course, yeah, maybe small caps will start to outperform again, but I think, I mean, since I've been a professional investor, and I've also studied stock market history intensely, but since I've been a professional investor in the mid-90s, for the most part, small caps tend to lead large caps. The smaller companies tend to lead. If the small companies reverse up, I mean, they tend to reverse up first. In the top of a bull market before things start to shit the bed, small caps, they go down first because they're the companies that people don't know if they have a future. They're the companies that often are losing money. They're the companies that are associated with higher risk. So they go down first. People are less likely to sell the big companies that they know are going to be around for a long time. Maybe they're paying dividends or it's been inherited and they're making more on the dividends than the initial investment at this point, the tax consequences. So people have been trained to think about the market that way. And I think in a bull market, and especially early in a bull market, I think people are trained. I'm talking about baby boomers, things like that. People like that age have been trained to think about the small caps as the place to be in a bull market. But if you look at what's been working, especially in the last few years, it's the big companies. And it's crazy for me to see when I look at, say, semiconductors, since we're talking about that, semiconductor sector, chip sector. I drill down when I see that the chip sector is the strongest sector in the market, and I want to see what are the strongest stocks in that sector, because that's how I invest. And, there's, I forget how many, 100-something semiconductor stocks. And right there at the top, this relatively strongest stock, Nvidia. And then other stocks like American Micro Devices and just the big semiconductor companies, Taiwan Semiconductor, whatever it is. So, the biggest semiconductor companies, or it's not just in semiconductors, it's in all the other industries too, where the companies are the ones that have the best, strongest performance. So I think that a lot of people are going to miss out because they're going to try to buy those things that traditionally they've been trained to think this is the little unknown company that nobody yet knows. So I can get in before everybody knows. And then when they get in, it takes off. But really, that's been proven wrong for so many years. And I'm still having trouble getting used to it. But a lot of missed opportunity by staying away from the big things that everybody knows. It's another thing. People stay away from stocks that everybody knows because they're like, oh, well, the story's already out. But I think that's a big mistake. I think that's
I mean that's a very good point. And here's another thing to consider. I mean, the sovereign debt bubble, it's getting it's a very shaky legs. And as soon as there are problems back in the bond markets, capital has to flee somewhere. And that's a huge pool of capital. And where will it go? I mean, it will obviously go into some hard assets and especially crypto, but it will also flee into the biggest stocks. I mean, Nvidia is right up there with them, right? So if you have capital flight, and also internationally, if capital flees from Europe, it will go to the U.S. stock market, especially if bonds look weak. So that's there's a huge wave of money that can basically add additional strength to this thesis or additional security. Absolutely, but we could talk here like for another few hours, but I got to get going soon.
I know that you've been super busy traveling around, flying everywhere, talking with family, especially your little one. What's your boy's name? I'm sorry, I forgot.
Stefano.
Stefano.
Yeah.
Stefano, did I say it right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Stefano.
Yeah, Stefano. Yeah.
Stefano. And I know, working with his condition has been pretty stressful and everything, and not only for you but other people in your family that you have to make sure are also remaining calm. I remember when my daughter was born, she had some issues, and just keeping her mom calm was so important to me because that's where my daughter spent the first 9 months of her existence, is in her belly, and that's what she knows. That's her home. So if her mom is stressed, I think about how that translates to the kid, and I know that in turn becomes a big stress on the husband. I mean, that was the case for me. Do you feel that way?
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And quite literally, if the mom is stressed, that translates right into what's in the milk, and the milk gets into the baby. So that's the thing with babies. Everything is a chain reaction. And if you as the man are not ultimately the hard rock that holds everything together, right, then you're in trouble big time.
Stressful breast milk. Awkward pause.
Yeah, that's the ending note.
Stressful breast milk, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, I'm glad this wasn't all about crypto. We got to talk a little bit on a personal level, and that's what I'm really going for. With this show, Chris Rowe Show, the theme that I'm really going for, the one thread throughout each of these episodes, is that I want to have guests who are still on the come up, but have already made it. So people like you're a successful money manager. You have a pretty sizable crypto fund. You talked about the investments that you have. You have homes in different countries. I mean, to most people, that is a big success. You're somebody who's already made it, but you have a long You have a big upside ahead of you. I shouldn't say a long ways to go, but a big upside ahead of you. Cryptocurrency does what we all think it's going to do. Sounds like it's going to be $100 million payday for you, buddy.
I sure hope so.
Well, congratulations, and I guess that means you buy me dinner next time we hang out.
Deal.
All right. All right, Marco Wutzer, ladies and gentlemen, is there anything that you want to tell people to check out? Anything you want to plug or anything like that?
Well, obviously we publish a newsletter together too. So if you're into crypto and want to learn more about it, it's called True Sovereign Profits, and I'm sure Chris will link it below the show, so you can take a look at what we're doing there. And I recommend everybody check it out because crypto is the future.
Thanks for watching The Rowe Show. If you like what you saw today, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to leave a comment, maybe leave a question. Maybe we might answer it. Share this with your friends, and most importantly, make sure that you're subscribed. Also, you can get more stuff like this at TrueMarketInsiders.io. I'll see you on the next show.